So, as we all know by now, Rashida Tlaib and Tulsi Gabbard were the only two Democrats to vote nay on the insulting stimulus bill, which gave us a scrap of $600 per person. Everybody else, including AOC, Ilhan Omar, the squad, besides Rashida, voted yay on this bill. So I'm just going to go over it really quickly. Basically, the entire squad voted for against some of the provisions in the Senate amendment, which was Roll 250, but they voted yes on Roll 251, which included the horrid foreign policy blunders, and it included the pork, and of course a resulting $600 stimulus check. Specifically, AOC, Omar, Ro Khanna, Jayapal, Gabbard, Presley, and Tlaib voted against the HR 133 amendment. That was the one containing the divisions B, C, and E, and F in the House roll vote 250. But the bill got a majority, so it passed. But when it came time to go to 251, the only two Democrats that voted against that one, which was the coronavirus relief bill, were, of course, Gabbard and Tlaib, which is it's an abomination, that they were the two Democrats. And, of course, some other Republicans voted no as well. Yeah. And we have the picture here. If you can show it, you can see the yays. I highlighted a few of them that were popular. It's kind of hard to see, but you can, scroll through that. And then,
big ups to Tlaib, though, fam, for voting. I just want to put that out there because I've been really rough on Tlaib, the whole squad in particular, but big ups to her for voting. And sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to point that out when you said she was one of the only two Democrats. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I will give credit where credit's due. I haven't been a fan of her impeachment stance. I wasn't a fan of a few of her, her tactics, so to speak. But this is about legislation. This is about policy. She voted no, and it took guts to be separate from the squad and actually have her own mind. And she has been the one, remember, she was pushing for those direct payments from the start. She was also okay with the UBI. I think Ilhan Omar even signed a Tulsi's UBI too. So she's been pushing this sort of thing, right? And you guys can see in the nays column who voted nay. You see Gabbard, you see Tlaib, and you see Massey, and you see Gates, I think, is there.
Justin Amash also was a nay too as well. Yeah. So you got Massey, Gates, you got Rand Paul raging in the Senate against it, whatnot. You know what I'm saying? You got Josh Hawley fighting for it and stuff, along with Bernie and the $2,000. I mean, I think lines were drawn on this, fam, once again, but I really would like to know the whole excuse of what people are going to say about the Yas Queen AOC right now and what's going on. I mean, how can we say that? And people are arguing, fam. Matt Stoller put up a tweet the other day saying that AOC voted against the CARES Act. And we said, no, she didn't. As you know, I watched that hearing. I watch these hearings like I'm crazy. I got up at 7 o'clock in the morning to watch it. And I told you she had a little piece on the floor when she put up her little kabuki theater. But when it came time to getting them to go, all right, let's go for a recorded vote, she didn't stand behind Massey. And when people said nay, there might have been two males that said it. She hid behind the whole process so she didn't have to take a stance on yes or no on it. It really was worse. It's the most chicken shit thing she could have done. And now how can we say that she voted against the CARES Act, but she voted for this abomination? No.
Right. And what happened was that she also got into an interview with that soccer player where she was talking about, we passed this. So she voted for a specific portion of it. And then when it came time to the voice vote, because a voice vote, first of all, that shouldn't be allowed. You need a record, right? The only one that was opposing was Massey. So that's basically what happened. So just moving on, the HR 133 bill was originally, the very first one came out in January of 2020. It was the United States versus Mexico Economic Partnership Act. And this bill initially passed the Senate on the 15th of January in the beginning, and then it was amended by the Senate, and that's what became what we know now as the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2021, which is the one that has the 5,000 pages that nobody read, and that the COVID relief that everybody just voted on. Okay, so people were getting confused because there was two different. There's different parts, right? And so they make it specifically difficult because you have to kind of explain it to people because nobody goes through this. I mean, we're going through this, but the vast majority of people don't go through this.
No.
So you guys can read, if you want, 5,000 pages. I mean, that's like worse than a Dostoevsky novel. And I don't know who has time to read 5,000 pages. Most of them did not read it, and they admitted. But among these inclusions in this bill, some of these things that rose out to me, because we could be here all night discussing it, were the foreign policy allocations, right? The millions and billions of dollars going into other countries instead of ours. So we're talking about democracy groups, right? Having democracy aid for Venezuela, which translates to coups, right? And you can see the graph here in the bill. It says, and that's layman's terms too, when I'm talking about the bill, the resolution of the funds appropriated by this act under the heading Economic Support Fund, not less than 33 million shall be made available for the democracy programs for Venezuela. Fam, what do you know about democracy programs in Venezuela?
Yeah, once again, why do we have to keep meddling in other people's businesses and what's not? This is an area which really does hurt the Trump administration and the Trump people with their ideology against socialism, and to even meddle. Who are we to say how a country should run their government? You know what I'm saying? The people electing people, and that's it. This is all about that economic strangle we want to put on Venezuela, because the elites, they want that oil there. You know what I'm saying? And this is an area where we could have just stayed on out of it. This is an ideology, I think, that we're going to have discussions with those people on the right, those Trumpers, who are so anti-socialism, communism, that think a move like this is okay, and they'll justify this movement right over here, and we'll say no against it and stuff. I mean, I just, once again, let's stay out of it. Let's stop sanctioning them. Let's stop sending money there. Let's stop supporting these coups. Now with their new elections, Juan Guaido doesn't even have the house over there, right? Okay, so now he's done. So what are we doing whatsoever? Trump even made a tweet today. He didn't talk about Venezuela in particular, but he did make a tweet. I don't know if it was a joke, if it was real, but somebody had it up. It says, "I hope we don't find life on another planet, because the Congress will then find a way to send money there instead of here to home in America." You know what I'm saying? It's like, enough is enough. And where is the squad on these positions and stuff, right? Aren't they at least supposed to be socialist of sorts, to call Democrats socialist when not? They're DSA Brooklyn members. Where the hell are they on this one? I mean,
they're eerily silent, right. Costa. Eerily silent. So there was also 300 million, right, for countering Chinese influence. And I don't even have to go over that, but you know how it is with the Chinese, China. And that's coming both from the neoliberal and the conservative establishment. We're talking about countering Chinese influence fund of the funds appropriated by this act under the headings Development Assistance, Economic Support Fund, et cetera, no less than 300,000 million shall be made available for a counterintelligence influence fund, blah, 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 the Chinese government of the People's Republic of China and the Chinese Communist Party, and entities acting on behalf of globally, etc. So they're trying to make sure we have our funds dedicated in case we want to intervene, which we have been and we will likely continue to do. Then the 500.
Before Israel, let me say something about China. Shouldn't the simple play when it comes to the Trumpers or the conservatives who do believe that China has a major influence in our government, instead of sending money to go over there and mess around with shit, shouldn't their focus be on stopping our politicians like Joe Biden from meddling with China? In other words, in every single step of the way, whatever your ideology is, shouldn't you still focus on what we're doing at home rather than what's going on over there? Because a lot of that money, whatever it is, it goes into contractors' pockets, and it really doesn't go to what it's supposed to be done. If you're so crazy about China and you got this Alex Jones mentality, like they're pulling the strings, then let's worry about our shit over here. Let's just make sure that we're taking care of our stuff over here. If you don't think they should have an influence on our movies and our entertainment and in our media, then let's fight to put up a bill, if you want, to say they can't do that anymore. I understand that. But sending money over there is just ridiculous. And, and that's the thing. That's where the right will excuse this type of foreign policy money. And I'll talk when we get to the end of this foreign policy part, fam. I want to tell you how the left will excuse shit, because we'll talk about it. So please continue with I believe you were talking about.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. I just want to get through it.
Go ahead.
So 500,000 million to Israel. And then we have, they talk about the defense, Israel Iron Dome procurement agreement, and it just goes over exactly everything that's in there. Basically, we give so much money to Israel. We've known this forever. Every single year, every single NDAA, it's the same shit. We're talking about meddling in our elections. Israel has more influence in this country than Russia will ever have, and then this is what continuously happens. And we're talking about military spending for Israel. What is Israel doing? Well, they're imposing these apartheid-like conditions on the Palestinians, and not just Palestinians, are attempted to spread throughout the region. And so we're completely aiding in this whole thing, right? And Absolutely. Just really quickly, I'm going to mention the $2 billion for Air Force missile procurement. So of course the Air Force, and Jonny has the little thing on that, basically for construction, procurement, and modification of missiles, rockets, and related equipment.
Going to contractors.
Exactly. And including spare parts and accessories, ground handling equipment, and training devices. $2 billion for these freaking military industrial complex, and you get $600. That is a level of insanity that we've reached in this country, and people wonder why people are angry. And then,
by the way, I was going to just say, when you're talking about military, do you have any more military stuff? Or
because I do. Yeah.
Go ahead. Well, let me know when you're done with the military stuff, and I'll just piggyback off it.
Okay. So, we have it's just disgusting. We have millions for weapons procurement for the Navy, right? So that's just more of the military stuff for the Navy. You guys can go through it. It's on page 272. The expansion of public and private plants, including the land necessary, therefore, and such lands and interests may be acquired, and destruction prosecuted therein prior to the approval of title, etc. And then Space Force is also, of course, included in this. So Space Force also gets tons and tons of money. You're talking about nearing the trillions in all of this stuff, right? It's disgusting.
Yep. So Afghanistan or Pakistan, right? Got a shit ton of money in this bill. And this is a way they duped the Democrats, the left and whatnot. That money supposedly was for gender studies in Afghanistan and Pakistan. Now, I'm all for any type of thing when you're doing gender studies, whatnot, and everything. But really, can we afford to do that in another country? We have no idea what their culture's like and what they want, what they do with it. Everybody's laughing, they're saying over there, because that money's, the generals are going to take that money and put it into their pockets and spread it out to their cronies. But that's the way they dupe the left into saying that this money's okay. Oh, we have to help out, with women across the globe and whatnot. I get that. I'm not against that. In fact, I thought that Jimmy Carter's book, was one of the most, I didn't even get to read the whole thing. I just read a little bit of it. It was amazing when it talked about the oppression that women feel all around the world. But giving the money directly to these governments with these bureaucrats, they know they're just going to funnel it right into their pockets. It's never going to go to what it's really meant for. And that's the way they're going to dupe the left with all this foreign policy money, because they can say, oh, so you're against it? You're against sticking up for women across the globe? It's like, no, I'm not against that stuff. But number one, that money's not going to go to that. It's going to be embezzled somewhere else. We see this in every step of the way, including Afghanistan. And number two, we really got to fix our problems at home. We got to clean our own house.
Yeah, exactly. It's not going to go to that. And also, we shouldn't be involving ourselves in how other countries do what they do, because if it was ever about actually helping people out, we wouldn't do it, because we always make it about getting something out of it, right? So if we're not getting anything out of it, we're not going to do it. It also serves to educate people with empire education, make them turn on their own government, make them believe that it's their fault instead of what we're doing to cause it. So again, it's a lot of miseducation too that goes along with that.
Yeah.
So The stimulus pork, though, this is something we've been talking about that Nancy Pelosi just refused to approve, with the CARES Act without having all this pork in it. And what we mean by pork is all this unnecessary baggage. Instead of just sending people direct aid, we're talking about the millions of dollars going to the Kennedy Center, $1 billion to the Smithsonian, all these art galleries and humanities. It sounds great, but really we don't know exactly how much these places are getting. We don't know exactly the operations behind it. I just know that all that money is not going to the arts as people would like to think that it is. And then, of course, there's a breakdown of foreign countries that you see: Egypt, Sudan, Ukraine, Israel, Nepal, Burma, Cambodia, Pakistan, Asia, RIA. You can see a lot of these countries, of course, are dependent on the United States. We're not giving money to Venezuela. We're not giving money to Cuba. We're not giving money to Russia or China. We're instead giving ourselves money to actually do whatever, pursue American vested interests, correct? Like, that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
And then at the very end, citizens, $600.
It's so stupid. Exactly. And it's so stupid. You were talking about the Kennedy Center and the Smithsonian and all these art galleries. They're not even open right now. They're closed down, and they're sucking up all this money. And, this just shows you how Donald Trump is less of a hawk than our Congress, our Democratic elected officials and our Republicans and stuff like that. They're giving $1.3 billion or $1.3 trillion to Egypt. Donald Trump has been really rolling back on some of the money that goes to Egypt. Even though Egypt gets a lot of weapons for us, they're one of the top 3 countries, he's been really pissed off because they've been doing business with Russia. So the hawks in the Democratic and Republican establishment tell Egypt, don't worry, we'll get you your money one way or the other. Here it is. It's in the form of oink, oink, oink pork in a COVID stimulus bill going to the military in Egypt. It's disgusting.
And so AOC basically came back defending herself, saying, when all of this came out, Rashida opposed it, etc. Then Trump, of course, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, said, no, I'm going to veto this stimulus. We need 2,000, not 600, etc. And then all the Democrats pretending, oh, okay, we had this going, right? AOC plastered her name onto Rashida Tlaib's effort and all her work and made it out like, oh, I'm on this. And she said, let's do it. I already co-wrote the COVID amendment for 2,000 checks, so it's ready to go, even though she voted for the $600. So why would she co-write something that she already voted against? Okay. And then if you scroll down, Jonny, she talks about the breakdown, right? For people asking about the insane and corrupt tax giveaways in the deal, example, the 3 martini lunch, trash, much of that gross stuff is actually omnibus. And she said it's a little confusing because it is confusing. Basically, there are 3 major components: the rule, the omnibus, and the COVID relief. And she goes through that. Basically, she voted for the COVID relief, but the COVID relief had some omnibus into it. And she said the first vote was the rule process vote, which passed. That was the one that I was talking about before, the one that was $250. And then the second vote was the omnibus. It was the deal that centered on trying to COVID relief to funding for the government. Again, COVID relief should not be tied to anything else. It should be 100% direct. Obviously, that's not something she chose to do. That's just the way the speaker and the system is set up. But then she was kind of pacifying, like, oh, this is really bad, but this is how it is. This is really bad, but this is how it is. And at the end, she was talking about the omnibus is actually a collection of legislation that funds each federal agency: Homeland Security, Environment, NASA, etc. There are many agencies. So the second vote was the omnibus with the DHS, the DOD, financial services, and a lot of the pork, right, that people are objecting to. She claims she voted no to that one. The third vote was the COVID relief. That's what she voted yes on, the $600 checks, $300 in UI, SNAP. There were also these omnis tacked on it, but it was less controversial. And she voted present initially, but then she said yes because people are hungry and she wanted to give them something. So again, this is the second time AOC has voted for a large transfer of wealth, right? And for a really shitty bill the first time, people keep saying that this didn't happen. Massey was the only one that said no in a voice vote. He was the only one. You can watch it. Paso watched 5 hours. Shout out to Todd Jones, who watched for 5 hours. He made a little clip on it, and he showed us. He was like, no, this, unless she sounds like a dude, this is Massey is the only one that said no. And this is the second time she's done that. She could have done what Rashida did. She could have absolutely kept voting no. She didn't do it. And this is after the fact, right? Because this is after the fact of we're talking about force of vote thing, which carries a lot of weight now, because now you're looking like a hypocrite. Oh, you're talking about all of a sudden pushing this. And I'm going to go over that in a minute. But just if you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I wanted to jump in real quick because I'm sick and tired of this whole situation where people are like, why are you attacking her so hardly on this? Listen, it's the position she takes and how she takes them. It was only Thomas Massey who drove down there to have a quorum. They weren't going to even have to show up. Pelosi and McCarthy were going to make it so that therefore they can just vote off the record and just pass this stuff, right? And Massey's the one who showed up. If she was really serious about stopping the CARES Act, and listen, we gave Tulsi a lot of shit for this too. Tulsi wasn't there to vote, but when she talked about the bill, she talked about the positive things that were going out there and stuff, rather than railing against it like she did this time. But I mean, if you really want to make an opposition and you really want to make a stance and you want people to understand where you're coming from, you draw the line. Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, Tulsi Gabbard, AOC's involved. They have standalone bills, which are like 5 pages, not 5,000 pages. Ilhan Omar has one right now on rent relief. So if you were really serious about it, you would have had that group of people, all those people that Jimmy put up on the screen, standing off to the side in a press conference saying, we are not passing this bill. We are not passing a 5,595-page bill with all this pork where the people only get $600. Okay. And it would have had Republicans or anybody join them and sit there and come together and say, we're drawing the line. She didn't do that in the CARES Act. She just took her little 1 minute on the floor, did a little kabuki theater, and then acted, like you said, the next day on that show with that soccer player, like she did pass it and stuff. I mean, it was a terrible, terrible way to oppose stuff. If you want to oppose it, we know this, fam. You call a press conference. Press conferences are huge. There are now 3 or 4 bills, Rashida, Ilhan, Tulsi, AOC, about UBI 5-page, rent relief. Why aren't they saying, Nancy, put our rent relief bill on the floor? They don't care. It's just a giant virtue signal. Right. They're really not serious about taking on power. They're only serious about hiding behind it.
Exactly. And that's the problem, because it's not enough anymore to virtue signal, because people need to see actual tangible actions like we've been talking about. This is why, like, the force to vote works for everything. It doesn't just work for Medicare for all. We can talk about force to vote. Give us $2,000 UBI for the rest of the whatever, however long the pandemic is. Force to vote. Give us unemployment extension for the rest of it. Give us rent cancellation. They could use their power, their popularity, their platform to organize a mass people movement for these things in a way like that's like a general strike, and people would jump on board. But none of that is happening. And so that's part of the frustration, I think, with a lot of people who are angry and who were really pushing for this Medicare for all thing.